Hey guys, it's Lou from Digital Noise Studios, and today I'm hanging out in my girlfriend's kitchen to talk about making YouTube videos that, don't suck. So it's 2016 and everyone wants to make YouTube videos. We all have smartphones, webcams, and abundance of things that we think that everyone should hear. So with all of this technology and these opinions, shouldn't be terribly difficult to start a YouTube channel, right? Well, yeah, basically. But how do you make content that doesn't immediately scream amateur and helps you stand out as an expert in whatever field your content belongs in? Well, let's go ahead and bring it back to the starting point. Whoa. What happened? Everything looks terrible, sounds terrible, and this is basically where everyone starts. So let's break it down. So YouTube is a video platform, right? So what's the most important part of video? You would think the video, but not so much. It's actually the audio. The audio is going to be what gives you the most professional appearance right off the bat. You can watch video that's subpar, but if the audio is crap, then no one's going to sit through and watch it. So basically, what we have here is the audio from the Canon 7D. It's the onboard mic, and it's just not good. It's picking me up. It's also picking up the air conditioner, possibly the fridge, and whatever else is going on everywhere. Now there's another problem. Most cameras don't have a gain control or a volume or input sensitivity. So the 7D, when it originally shipped, had a auto gain controller or AGC, and so based on whatever it detected, it would then turn up the gain if things were too quiet or turn it down if it's too loud. The problem is what you have then in any sort of dynamic environment where you've got the AC at a lower volume, my voice at a higher volume. When my voice stops, it increases the gain to where it can get it to what it thinks is the correct volume. So as soon as I start talking, the AC noise cranks down, and then once I stop, it comes back up, and that's called pumping. You hear that in pretty much any EDM song. And that's what you end up hearing with that AGC. So we need to turn that off if there is the option to do so, and then you set that input gain manually. And personally, I use this almost any time I'm shooting video, especially at a concert where I'm shooting live video at a show. Always set that based on wherever I'm standing in the venue. So we'll go ahead and do that and see what it sounds like. Okay, so now we've turned off the AGC in the camera. Had to set the level manually for here, turned it up until like maybe just past 3/4 of the way or so, somewhere around there. It's definitely not going to be pumping or going back and forth between loud and quiet, so it gives a much more consistent and less frustrating and distracting audio track. Even if you didn't have a better mic, turning off the AGC and running with a manual gain setting geared towards your vocal element as opposed to your background element would be good. Definitely better than running with an AGC turned on if you have that option. If not, well then we're just kind of stuck. But seeing as that's turned off, let's try to upgrade the audio a little bit, and we'll throw on a Rode VideoMic Pro 1st generation. It's a shotgun mic, gets you a very directional audio sound. So it rejects audio from the sides, from behind, much better than the onboard mic or even like a normal handheld microphone. It's really good at just picking up basically whatever you're pointing it at. That includes whatever's behind it, so you do have to be careful of that. But it's definitely a good option. I use it for video at concerts, recording video of shows, and it works pretty well, so we'll go ahead and turn that on and see how that sounds. Okay, so now we've got our video mic turned on. Set on the camera, just the normal settings, no pads, no nothing. I did have to turn up the input gain on the camera in order to get a good strong audio signal, but we still have all sorts of noise. Even though it's directional, we have sound bouncing off from behind us and all that, so it's still not great. But we do have another option to get an even cleaner mic, and that would give us better sound. Still have problems with other ambient noises, but I think it's a better option than the VideoMic Pro when you have the option, and that would be using a recording mic, like a studio mic. So my personal mic that I like to use is a Bluebird, and Blue makes great mics. A lot of people are familiar with the Snowballs or the Yetis and those USB mics. This is their studio quality version. So I've got that. You can run it into an audio interface and then record it to the computer and then match it up with a video in post. Or you can run it directly into the camera and go that way. If you're on a time frame, if you need to be quick, run it directly into the camera using a preamp or the output of a standalone audio interface. But if you need the ability to just drop it right into Reaper or Pro Tools or some other digital audio workstation, then going to the input to the computer would be the easier option. For here, we're just going to do it quick and dirty. I'm going to run it into the camera using a Rolls Mini Pre, not the best, but it's what I've got with me, and that should get us better audio than the VideoMic Pro. So we'll go ahead and turn that on now. So now we've got the Bluebird hooked up right there, and it sounds a lot better, right? For this, I have it running through a little preamp, had to turn the gain all the way down, and then turn down the gain on the camera using the manual input settings, and it's still giving a lot of low noise around the minus 30 dBs. But at least doing the clap tests and making some random noise, it seemed to be coming out an all right level. So right now we've got the audio taken care of. You can still have subpar video and get away with it if your audio is on point. So at least we've got that taken care of. But we still need to get the video up to snuff, so we'll do that next. Right now we have just the ambient light from these left and right windows, along with all of the house lights. House light there, house light there, house light there, and then the two windows there, and then another window back there. We have a couple of problems though. It's not looking great. It's a little bit dark. In order to make sure that I stay in focus, whether I move backwards or forwards, I've had to set the aperture down to about f4.5, so that cuts down on our light. Shutter speeds when working with video is kind of hit or miss, depending on what frame rate you're shooting at. With the aperture locked down at a good compromise, shutter speed locked down at what it needs to be, we only have one other variable to play with to get things brighter or darker, and that's ISO, or ISO, however you want to say it. So right now the ISO is set to about 1600. It's not going to get us the best image. Thankfully on the 7D it's still usable in a pinch, but that is definitely something we would like to have at a lower setting. So what we have here is technically getting the job done. It locks us down as far as flexibility for in-camera settings, lighting direction, because we only have static lights, and we can only shoot during certain times of the day or certain types of weather. If it were 9 o'clock at night, our light would look horrible. We'd have only the inside lights, and trust me, it's not enough. So what do? Well, thankfully, we can get more light. And these days, there are tons of inexpensive options available. So let's go ahead and get a light turned on and see what things look like. All right, so now we've got one light right here. It's a 24 by 24 inch softbox from Neewer. And so we've got that one light turned on, definitely better. It allowed me to bring the ISO on the camera down from 1600 to about 400, probably pushing it a little bit, but with that lower ISO level, I have less noise, so I can push it a little bit brighter in post, and it's not the end of the world if this is a little too dark. But so that's our one light. What is better than one light? Two lights. Right now we've got both lights on, and that is actually getting to be a little bit too bright at the settings that we are running at. So what we want to do is kind of make sure that all of our exposure is in a good range and we don't have any blown out highlights. So now we've got our scene lit. Both lights are on, including the ambient, but these are what's really doing the bulk of the work. Together, these are equivalent to about 700 watts. So these are CFL bulbs. In fact, this set is from Neewer. Link will be in the description below. And they're about $70 on Amazon. It's not bad. Construction is a little bit shaky. As the AC is on, they're kind of moving. But they're not bad for indoor use or no wind. They can go pretty high. I wouldn't suggest putting them any higher than 6 or so feet. Right now, basically the bottom is about to here, and the top of the box of the front surface is about here. So it's a pretty good set. $70 Amazon, can't go wrong. And again, I'll have that in the description below. So now that we've got these set though, we had to back down our exposure just a little bit, do some changes here and there. So that's what we've got going on here now. Visually we're good, audio hardware is all set, but it still sounds bad. And that would be because we forgot to turn off the AC. Forgot. The AC, a lot of people will forget to turn it off, not realizing how much noise it can possibly make depending on where in the house you are as compared to where your vents are. This is a fairly small house and there's vents all over, so there's really no escaping it. So what we'll do is turn off the AC and listen to our difference. Now we've turned the air conditioner in the house off, so we don't have that annoying buzz in the background, and everything is much more clean. The problem with places like this is it's all hard surfaces. There's corners everywhere, there's tile floors, and unfortunately we have an echo. So without putting up curtains who knows where and maybe doing a little bit of sound treatment, we're stuck. We can't really do much there. That's what we've got. Now, if we were to bring the mic closer, then we can turn the gain down and therefore get less background noise. We can knock down a lot of those reverberations and get a cleaner sound. There we go. So everything is dialed in camera, looking good. Our lights are set well with those settings. Everything looks smooth, evenly lit. No blown out highlights, no deep shadows that can lack detail if they're under or overexposed. So we're looking good there. Speaking of settings, and this is really important, you want to try and make sure that all of your camera and audio gear is in manual settings. Kind of already touched on this with the AGC controlling audio and setting the shutter and aperture and all that. Basically, with shutter, aperture, ISO, even white balance, you want these set manually. And the reason for that is as you're going through and doing a shoot, and you're just, let's say, doing one long take or several back-to-back takes, if you're in auto mode, your scene, your exposure can change, and then you go to splice those together, do jump cuts, and you're going to see very drastic shifts in what you thought was the same exposure across the board. As we're watching it, subtle shifts aren't necessarily apparent because they're very gradual. But once you start cutting chunks out and getting rid of them and scooting things together in your editor, those cuts are very apparent. And then if you're a stickler for details, you try to post-process it to get it all to match. Might as well just get that out of the way and set all of your key settings, your shutter, ISO, aperture, white balance, audio levels, set them all manually. That way you know that every shot from take to take to take, scene to scene to scene, are all consistent. So that's one thing you definitely want to make sure of. Learning how these manual settings work, if you're not familiar with photography or basic videography, it's not terribly difficult to learn. There's tons of resources out there from great photography instructors on YouTube, and just take a little bit of time and learn about what's commonly referred to as the exposure triangle, and you can kind of get a grasp on how that works. One last thing to take into consideration, and this is definitely an important one, is the composition of your videos or your framing of your shot. As you can see, things have changed here because, quite frankly, I'm a bigger dude, and having the camera at a lower level emphasized this, and not the best thing in the world. Trying to, not be fat, basically. Anyways, to help combat my physical stature, basically, and make things look a little bit more appealing, what I did was raise up the camera, angled it down just a bit, and that way I still have basically the same scene, and it's just a little bit more flattering. And you'll see this especially prevalent on a lot of beauty vloggers and whatnot. You'll see that they use specific camera angles, specific lighting, very flattering angles and lighting to come across as a better expert, I guess you could say. So that said, keep all of these in mind. And one thing that you'll notice here is that along the top and the bottom of the frame, things are bowed out. And the reason for that is that I'm using a kit 18 to 35 millimeter lens on my camera, because the 24s and 50s that I had floating around here just weren't wide enough in the space that I have. The downside is things look all barrel distorted, but at least now you're not getting just a crop of right here. Keep that in mind as well. If you have space, the popular focal length, I guess, would be a 35 millimeter. So keep that in mind as well. And along those lines, speaking of cameras and lenses and settings and all of that, it doesn't really matter what camera you have. As long as you have good quality light, a decent space to work in, and a way to get audio into either your camera or computer in a clean manner, you can create great videos. It's not really dependent on the camera. Sure, having a nice fancy camera does help things, but even if you don't have a big expensive DSLR, you can still get away with not having a way to turn off the AGC for your audio. You can always record audio separately and sync them up later. Even if you may not have all the settings for different frame rates you want to do, it doesn't matter. You can shoot with your iPhone or Android in the same setting and it's gonna work just fine. So here is my LG G4. I can shoot video just fine, and the image quality is definitely on par. I don't have it set to the 4K or UHD setting. It's just the standard 1080p. And we'll cut to the onboard mic on the LG, and it's pretty good audio, really. And then we'll cut back to this one here. But yeah, so even if you don't have a DSLR, you can still shoot just fine video with your Android or iPhone. And of course, having a stabilizer or a tripod definitely helps. So yeah, it really doesn't matter what camera you have. As long as you have the light, the audio, the space, you're good to go. So that's about it. Hopefully this will help your video quality improve and give you some insight into what you can do creatively and technically. Some of the concepts definitely could warrant a video on their own, such as audio settings, exposure triangle, things like that. But at least this will get you into the basics. And so just to recap, here's our bad quality audio and video and lighting. And back to our high quality, better version of what we started with. All links will be in the description below, as well as those handy like and subscribe buttons. Go ahead and hit those if this video has helped you out. Anyways, see ya.